Black market babies could be a postscript to Leslie Stahl's story last week about Iron Curtain babies who were taken from their parents and handed over to families the East German government felt would raise them as loyal communists. Well, tonight's story is about babies right here in the United States, in Memphis, Tennessee in the 1940s, who were taken from their parents and not just handed over to other couples, but sold to other couples with the connivance of a corrupt judge. Steve Popper was one of those babies. He was born in 1943, but was taken from his mother the moment she gave birth. She searched for her son ever since, and now those years of waiting and wondering are finally about to be over. On board Flight 403, arriving at the Memphis airport, is her son, now 48 years old, a son she has never met.
There he is.
Is that him? Oh, that handsome devil.
How you doing?
Okay, Rudy, bless your heart, Steve.
Good to see you.
Oh, this is what I've been praying for, Steve, honey, for the longest.
Don't be nervous, man.
Praying for Steve.
Mary Reed was unmarried back in 1943, and just moments after giving birth to her son, she was told to sign some routine papers.
Could you read them at the time? Were you capable of reading and understanding what?
I don't, because I think they probably just got me when I was under the influence of the, anesthesia, and everything.
She was groggy, but she signed, just like a woman named Georgia Tan told her to. Tan was well known as the director of the Tennessee Children's Home Society, and she promised she'd look after the baby until Mary was out of the hospital. But that is not what happened.
You went to the Tennessee Children's Home Society to try to get the baby
I
back?
sure did, They wouldn't give me no kind of information, no records, nothing.
What, they just turned you away?
They sure did,
It was only then that Mary learned those routine papers were actually adoption papers. She had been duped into giving up her son. And even though she went to court to try to get him back, it was no use. Years later, when a lawyer named Robert Taylor was appointed to investigate, he discovered Georgia Tan had forced a lot of young mothers to sign papers when they were too sedated to know what they were signing.
That's absolutely true. And I've had the mothers tell me that. Now, they would come, and if they were unsedated and tried to hold on to the babies after the baby was born, then Georgia Tan would step in and say, well, you don't want your people in your hometown to know about this, do you?
But Tan would never tell those mothers what she planned to do with their babies.
The parents thought they were going to be held in safekeeping, and before they could do anything, the babies had been sold and sent to New York or California.
And that is just what happened to Mary Reed's son. Less than a week old, he was sold to a family in New Jersey. They named him Steve Popper. He grew up knowing he was adopted from the Tennessee Children's Home Society, but never knowing the truth about how he was taken from his birth mother. He says he always believed he had been unwanted, abandoned.
I never had any desire to find my birth mother, birth father, because of the fact that I felt if they put me up for adoption, they didn't want me, so why should I want to find them?
But then this past summer, he read a magazine article about the scandal, and he investigated. And he discovered that his mother never meant to give him up, that she had fought to get him back.
It was like a bombshell, but here I was condemning this woman for giving me up all these years and never wanting to find her, and when in fact it was just the opposite. I was taken from her, and she was trying to get me back. She did want me.
That discovery led Steve Popper to search and search, and finally he was able to learn his birth name, and then he found his mother.
I got her on the phone. She said, "Oh, honey, I've been waiting for this day all my life. Ever since you were born, I've been waiting for this day."
And he said, Mom said, when I get a chance, says, I'm going to get down there and, see you the first chance I get. Oh, I never tell you, I was just crying and shaking all over. It was so excited.
At a house decorated with yellow ribbons, Steve Popper was welcomed home. He and his family exchanged photo albums and began to catch up on those lost years. And now there is another photo in the album.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For one family, a happy ending and a new beginning. But what about all the other families torn apart by Georgia Tan?
For during the 1940s, Tan took hundreds, maybe thousands of babies from their birth mothers, mostly women who were poor or uneducated and so couldn't fight back. And then she would place the babies with childless couples who would pay up to thousands of dollars. Tan told those parents the money was just to cover expenses. But in truth, Most of the money went into Georgia Tan's pocket.
Tan printed slick brochures to advertise the children. At holiday time, she'd plant newspaper stories offering Christmas babies available for adoption. She shipped babies from coast to coast on late-night flights and then would distribute the babies to waiting parents in the lobby of a hotel like the Biltmore in Los Angeles. She provided children to Hollywood celebrities like June Allison, and Joan Crawford got her twin girls from Tan, too. Tan's baby business grew, and she needed more and more children. And so she turned to her good friend, a juvenile court judge named Camille Kelly, who was well connected in Memphis city government.
She had a stooge down in the welfare department when someone would apply for assistance because they'd lost their job. This person would get their name, get in touch with Camille Kelly. Camille Kelly would send a deputy out and pick them up, take them back, award custody to Georgia Tan, and Georgia Tan would sell them. They were gone before you could do much.
Tan seemed to care little about the qualifications of the adoptive parents. Many were abusive. And she also cared little about conditions in her own orphanage, for despite the publicity photos, medical care there was almost non-existent. During an epidemic of diarrhea, more than 40 babies died. But the adoptive parents knew nothing of the conditions at the home, nor for that matter just where their babies were coming from.
There was an inmate up at the Western State Hospital for the Insane that had babies just every year. No one knew who the father was or the fathers, whether they were other inmates or whether they were attendants. But she placed them out as being healthy children.
It was Taylor's investigation in 1950 that put Georgia Tan and the Tennessee Children's Home Society out of business. Georgia Tan died just as the results of the investigation were being made known. Judge Camille Kelly died a few years later. Neither had been prosecuted. Denny Glad is co-founder of an organization called Tennessee's The Right to Know. She helps adoptees track down their birth families, and she says nothing was ever done for the parents who were robbed of their children.
When they found that things were awful and that it was wrong, and Georgia Tan was proven to have indulged in fraudulent and destructive enterprise, they simply closed the books and hid it away.
Closed them up, sealed them up.
From shame, from cover-up, from...
As much as anything to keep from having to admit that it ever happened.
These days, Denny Glad can be found combing through old documents in libraries and courthouses around Memphis. With the few records that have now been unsealed, she has helped hundreds of adoptees, like Steve Popper, whom you met earlier. Helped them to find the truth about where they came from. When we caught up with her, she was on her way to Memphis Juvenile Court with a woman named Pat Slaughtower, another victim of Georgia Tan. We joined Pat on a journey to find her roots, and at the court she saw for the first time the records that answered some of her questions.
It's your mother's handwriting. Oh my gosh.
Pat learned that she'd been one of 4 children growing up in a stable home, a loving home. But Judge Camille Kelly had deemed her parents to be unfit and simply took the children away, turning them over to Georgia Tan for adoption. Pat found some letters, wrenching letters, written by her mother, begging and pleading for her children.
One particular excerpt was my mother trying to see us children at Christmas time, and you just know she never got to see her children at Christmas.
Pat was nearly 4 when she was taken from her parents. Her brothers and sister were split up too.
Why didn't they keep a couple of sisters together, in my case, and a couple of brothers together? Those 2 brothers were 8.5 and 5.5. They were very aware that they were missing one another. Yeah, why did they so recklessly divvy our lives out?
To those questions, the dusty files contain no clue.
If Georgia Tan was sitting here opposite you, what would you want to ask her?
The one thing that keeps running through my mind is, how could you have done that? A woman aware of the sufferings of these people, how could you have done what you did?
And the same to Judge Camille Kelly?
Same, Judge Camille Kelly. How is it possible that you could have done that to children, to birth parents?
It was money that lured them into it, and I think they were probably the lowest people in the world morally to do something of this nature.
Fur coats, chauffeur-driven limousines, gambling trips to Cuba, summer cottage on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, social status with Hollywood's movie stars.
She owned a terrific amount of property, real estate. Camille Kelly was another one. She made $300 a month. She was the judge of the juvenile court.
Yes.
Made $300 a month, new Cadillac every year, chauffeur, housemaid, cook.
And Kate Burke, president of the American Adoption Congress, says little is being done even today to protect parents and children from black market baby racketeers.
Is it possible any place in the United States today for a judge and somebody like a Georgia Tann to go into a home and take 2 or 3 or 4 kids and overnight send them Lord knows where, split up families, the way it happened with the Tennessee children?
Sure, it is. I mean, because of secrecy, and that's what makes all of this possible. Because once those records are sealed, that's it. You're out of here. You're safe.
So there can be a latter-day Georgia Tann.
Probably is. Probably is.
There's a postscript to the story of Pat Slothauer. She was desperate to find her parents, but for years, her records were sealed too. So we contacted private investigator Catherine DeYounger. Working with a few clues that were available, she was able to track Pat's father to Los Angeles. Incredibly, he lived just a few miles away from Pat.
I was told by someone who was friendly with him in California in those later years that he had come out there to find his children. And that's what he did. He looked and looked for all the years that he was there. And here was one of his children just living within the same Los Angeles area.
But that discovery came too late. Pat's father and mother had died. But she was able to find an older cousin who knew her parents well. He remembered Pat, too. And on a farm in Louisiana, she met W.J. Smith and his wife, Nettie May, for the first time.
Tell me about my mom. Was she pretty?
She was pretty. Yes, sir. She was pretty. She was a beautiful woman. And your daddy, he wasn't no bad-looking gentleman. And they loved you a lot.
Pat has been reunited with a brother and her sister. And finding W.J. and his family has helped, too. But nothing can compensate her for the fact that she never had a chance to show her mother and dad what kind of person she grew up to be.
It was really important to me to let our parents know that I turned out okay. Because I felt like as much as I've hurt, I feel like they've hurt too. So my gift to them would be I'm a very successful businesswoman, I feel. Something to be proud of. Instead of the stigma of what they've lived with.
That's your mother's right there.
For Pat Slothauer, like a lot of children torn from their parents by the Tennessee Children's Home Society scandal, the answers have come too late.
Oh, I wish I could have met her.
Oh, you loved her.
I know.
Chances are there are thousands of men and women looking in right now who know that they were adopted through the Tennessee Children's Home Society, but who are learning for the first time what really happened there. And they must be wondering, was I willingly surrendered by my mother as a lot of babies were, or was I one who was stolen and sold? If you're curious, the organization known as Tennessee's The Right to Know is available to help. Contact Denny Glad, that's G-L-A-D. She's the only one in the Memphis phone book.